Welcome to the Traditional Way Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Shumway. We are brought to you by the Martial Arts Internet Network, where you can find all things sport karate related on our various programs and on our website at www.mainternetwork.com. We are also brought to you by the K-Talk Nationals that took place in New York City on November 24th. Now, I got to attend the event and saw a great turnout. The event was ran smoothly and pretty quickly for as big as it was, and was a great showcase of the New York City's local karate community, as well as some national and international competitors sprinkled in amongst the divisions. The biggest takeaway for me has to be seeing Caio da Silva back in action. Now, Caio took off for school and hasn't been active on the WKF since the 2023 Pan American Championships, where he won his second continental title. But you wouldn't have guessed he missed a single day of competition with his performances at the K-Talk Nationals. It was great to see him back out, but more importantly, it was a good showcase of traditional kata that was observed by a ton of young, up-and-coming athletes that are still moving their way up through the ranks in the sport karate scene. Now, you can get a full breakdown of the winners of the event on the episode of the Inside Scoop that aired on November 25th. That is available on all of the major podcast sites and at the Martial Arts Internet Network Facebook and YouTube pages. Now on to the big event that took place at the same time as the K-Talk Nationals, the Karate World Cup in Pamplona, Spain. Now, full disclosure, I was not a big fan or big advocate for the WKF dividing up the team event from the individual world championships, and I may still not be completely sold on the idea, but the WKF did a very good job keeping enough action throughout the weekend to ensure that there was a great show to watch for all the spectators. I want to start with a rule that came into effect last year that played a huge role in some of the outcomes. Now, this rule isn't as well known amongst some people who watch the WKF, either casually. I know this because a bunch of people have reached out to me to help me explain it, and it has to do with ties in a kumite match. Let's start with the easiest way to win a tied fight, right? The sensu advantage. For those who don't know, an athlete gets a sensu advantage by being the first to score an unopposed point. If the match is still tied and one athlete has the sensu advantage, he or she wins. However, you can lose the sensu advantage during a fight if you acquire forewarnings, also called the hand soku chui. And this happens a lot, especially since there is a rule that says if a competitor gets a penalty for avoiding combat in the last 15 seconds of the fight, the referee will declare a hansoku chui and the loss of sensu. This is the most common way the sensu is lost during, it's due to an athlete attempting to run out the clock in the final seconds. Now, with no sensu, the decision comes down to which athlete scored the most ippons, or three-point techniques, and if there's none there, then who scored the most waza aris, or two-point techniques. If after all that no winner has been declared, the judges will call for a hantai, or a decision of the 5 referees who won the match. Now, the reason this came up at the Karate World Cup is there was some big fights that were determined by ippons and waza ari that did not go to a hantai. This left a couple spectators wondering how the match was given to a team when the score was tied and no decision was made. And I'll admit, I had to do some research on this myself to make sure I explained it in detail to you guys. Also, I think the WKF announcer needs to do a better job at explaining this, because when you're watching it and, you know, it's a tied fight and they just award the fight to one side, you kind of left wondering what's going on for anyone who doesn't understand all of the intricacies of the WKF rules. But now that all of that has been explained, let's start breaking down the results from the Karate World Cup. As we start with the women's team kumite divisions, we did have a couple of surprises in the elimination rounds. Starting with elimination pool 1, Egypt took the top spot of the pool, but the big surprise was the US team making it to the final 8 out of this pool. They were not expected to go far in this event, but they would shock the world with their performances. We'll get back to them in a bit. And Pool 2 found a heavily favored German team not make it out of the elimination pool, as Japan and Turkey would take the top 2 spots to advance. Italy and Kosovo would advance up from Pool 3, and Pool 4 saw France and Spain advance. The quarterfinals were set, and in the first round, Spain defeated Egypt 2-1. The second match was Japan over Kosovo 2-0. Italy beat Turkey 2-1, and the US team defeated France 2-0. The semifinal matches came down to Japan versus Spain and USA versus Italy. In the first match, the first fight was between world number 2 Maria Garcia and world number 30 Kana Nagai, where an interesting call was made at the end of this match. Now, Nagai was up 2-0 and on the last exchange, Garcia stepped out of bounds, giving her her 5th warning. So with no time left on the clock, they still issued the warning, officially giving the match to Japan by disqualification. Again, it wouldn't have mattered because Nagai was leading at the end of time, but it was still an odd call to make since there was no time left on the clock. With Japan up by 1 match, they called on Sahara Shimada to bring it home, and she did not disappoint, defeating Maria Mejas 5-0 to secure their spot in the final. In the second match, Italy paired off against USA. In the first fight, world number 5, Cleo Ferracuti defeats Cirrus Lingle 6-2, setting up a round 2 between Cirrus's younger sister, Skylar, who would meet Pamela Bodai. Now, Bodai would control this fight for the majority of the match, and things were starting to look very bleak for the Americans, as Italy had a 63 lead with 5 seconds left. All of a sudden, Skylar went all in on attack and scored an Ippon with leaving 1 second left on the clock. Now, this tied the match, and as we discussed earlier in the opening, Skylar was the only player to score an Ippon. So with the last score, it gave USA the win on the tied fight, allowing for a third and decisive fight between Trinity Allen and Viola Lalo, where Trinity would win that fight and secure their spot in the final. The final match between Japan and USA would not be as exciting as the semifinals, unfortunately. In the first fight, Nagai would defeat Cirrus Lingle by a score of 4-3, and Shimada would defeat Skylar Lingle 3-0 to win the gold medal. However, for the USA team, a silver medal is nothing to be upset about. Again, they had the tournament of their lives at this event and made it to the final, which, to be fair, I don't believe anyone expected them to make it that far. Spain would also secure the bronze medal in front of their home crowd. In the men's Kumite divisions, there were no surprises in Pool 1 as Iran and Italy both came out atop of the pool to move on to the quarters. Pool 2 saw Japan and Egypt take the top 2 spots in that pool, where surprisingly Japan would beat Egypt in their match, which was a huge surprise as Egypt was so heavily favored. Kazakhstan and France would make it out of Pool 3, and Pool 4 would see Jordan and Slovakia make it out. In the quarterfinals, the first matchup saw Iran defeat Slovakia 3-0. The second match found Japan over France 3-0. In the third match, Egypt defeats Kazakhstan 3-1. And in the last matchup, Italy beats Jordan 3-1. Setting up the semifinals where Iran would face Japan and Egypt would see Italy. In the first matchup of the semifinals, it started off weird as Mahmoud Namadi would face off against Kantaro Yamuchi, which ended in a 0-0 tie and no hantai was awarded, leaving that match unimportant to the outcome of the overall match between the two teams. In the second fight, we saw the heavyweights face off as Madi Garmjani and Rikito Shimada would fight it out, seeing Garmjani take the match 6-0. In the third fight, world number 3 Saleh Al-Bazari would defeat Kisei Sakiyama by a score of 4-0 to take a 2-0 match lead. In the fourth fight, Madi Kotobashi, who you all may remember, shocked the world at the individual worlds last year with his silver medal. He faced off against U21 athlete Yusuke Abe, where Kotobashi would win 5-1 and secure Iran's spot in the finals. The second match of the semis between Italy and Egypt would start off with U21 world number 1 Matteo Avanzani defeating Ali Al-Sawi, an exciting matchup with a final score of 7-5. Second fight was Lorenzo Pietramarchi lose to world number 1 Taha Mahmoud by a score of 4-2. The third fight, Matteo Fiore had to face world number 1 Abdallah Abdelaziz, and Abdallah would continue his dominance in Kumite, winning the match 9-0 in under 1.5 minutes, giving Egypt a 2-1 match lead. The fourth fight was Daniel DeVivo and Ahmad Al-Masri, sorry about that, where Ahmad would win that fight in similar fashion, taking the 8-0 spread, giving Egypt the last match needed to advance to the final. Setting up a final match that many were hoping to see, Egypt versus Iran. And the first fight started off strong as world number 2 Youssef Badawi stepped up to defeat Garmjani by a score of 7-5. The second fight, Kotobashi and Al-Sari would have an unexciting match that ended in a 0-0 tie with no decision. The third fight between Abazari and Abdelaziz saw Egypt win 5-0 margin, setting up the fourth fight between Al-Masri and Namadi, where Al-Masri would win that fight 6-1 and secure the gold medal for Egypt. Japan would take home the bronze. In the women's team kata division, Egypt and Peru would make it out of Pool 1 and advance to the quarters, where I'll be honest, I wasn't really tracking Peru as a contender in this division, so I was surprised when they advanced, especially over Turkey, who was also in the same pool. Italy and China would advance out of Pool 2, and Pool 3 would see Spain and Iran advance. Lastly, Japan and Portugal would advance out of Pool 4, leaving behind France, who would not advance to the surprise of a lot of us who followed the sport, and many of us did predict that they would see the Final Four. The quarterfinals started out with a close matchup where Portugal would defeat Egypt by decision, with both Portugal's Paiku and Egypt's Go to Shiho Dai performances earning them a score of 41.0. The judges gave the match to Portugal. The second matchup saw Iran and Italy face off, where Italy would dominate this match as their Ohan Dai performance beat Iran's Kanku Sho by a score of 42.8 to 39.6. The third match between Spain and China saw a Shiduru battle of China's Anand versus Spain's Anand Dai. Spain would win this match 42.1 to 40.5. And in the last matchup of the quarters was Japan versus Peru, in a Shotokan matchup where Japan's Unsu beat Peru's Go to Shiho Dai by 2.2 points. In the first semifinal match, Portugal and Italy would both opt to run Anand Dai, and it was Portugal that would prevail by a final score of 41.7 to 40.9, giving Portugal its shot in the final. The second match of the semis saw Japan defeat Spain in a Shiduru versus Shotokan showdown. Japan's Go to Shiho Sho performance would outshine Spain's Chatnara Kusanku performance by a score of 43.6 to 41.6. Setting up the final being Peru and Japan. And it was not close, as Japan's performance of Unsu would defeat Peru's Karumfa performance by a score of 46.6 to 43.2, and which may be the most lopsided kata final score I've seen in covering the WKF. Spain would take home the bronze medal in front of the home crowd. In the men's team kata division, the elimination rounds did not offer a lot of surprises. Italy and Egypt came out of Pool 1, Turkey and China would advance out of Pool 2, Spain and Kuwait would advance out of Pool 3, leaving France behind in the elimination pool. I would have expected them to go further as well. And in the last pool, Japan and Iran would advance. In the first match of the quarterfinals, it was a Shotokan matchup between Iran and Italy, where Italy's Go to Shiho Sho would top Iran's Kanku Sho by a score of 42.6 to 41.1. The second match saw Turkey and Kuwait face off, where the Go to Shiho Sho of Turkey was enough to top Kuwait's Unsu by a score of 42.4 to 41.5. The third matchup saw the only Shiduru teams who made it to the final 8, as Spain and China would face off against each other. It was Spain's Anand Dai over China's Anand by 2.4 points. The last matchup of the quarter saw Japan defeat Egypt, as their Unsu was more than enough to defeat Egypt's performance of the same kata. The semifinal matches were set and would start with Italy versus Turkey, where Turkey's Kanku Sho defeated Italy's Unsu by 1 full point. And in the second matchup of the semis, Japan would dominate and defeat Spain, knocking out the last Shiduru-style team that was left in the division, as Japan's Sochin scored 44.1, and Spain's Ohan Dai could only muster 42.6, setting up a big showdown between Turkey and Japan, which I implore everyone watching to find this match on YouTube and watch it. It is the best representation of the differences between JKA and JKS Shotokan. Although the kata movements are the same, with both teams opting to run Unsu, it's the cadence and where they emphasize power that is different. Both performances were exceptional. However, in the end, Japan would secure their 5th straight men's team kata world championship, as they would win with a final score of 46.7 to 45.3. Spain would secure the bronze medal. There isn't a lot to unpack from the Karate World Cup, as there were only 4 divisions and not a ton of surprises. Japan would secure 3 out of the 4 gold medals at this event, which isn't surprising in the kata divisions. I think everyone expected a sweep for Japan here, but the success they had in Kumite division was surprising to me. A handful of Japanese athletes have made big strides in the individual Kumite divisions this year, but I didn't anticipate that they would have enough talent for a full team. But I was proven wrong. Staying with the Kumite divisions, the Women's USA Kumite team had a great performance. I'll be the first one to eat my hat after watching them fight, because I didn't expect them to make it out of the elimination pool, and with every win I started to believe. Unfortunately, they came up short in the end, but I don't think any one of those athletes has anything to hang their head about. They were great. And with that, all the veteran age category events are done for the year. We do have one more event coming up. It's the Youth League event in Venice, where we will see some good American and Canadian talents attempt to make their marks in their respective divisions prior to the end of the year, and we'll see how that ends up in the final rankings. We will see Matthew Garisha in attendance. He's going to be doing junior male kata. Emerson Cottingham will compete in the junior female kata division. Chian Issa will join Matt in the junior male kata division, and Ken Ochoa will be in the junior minus 55 kumite division. And that's just to name a few of the talented individuals that are going to be there. All in all, America and Canada will bring 51 athletes to this event, and it should be a good one for them. Make sure to join me on the next episode where I'll bring you the results from that event, and continue to support the Martial Arts Internet Network by liking, commenting on, and sharing this and all of the programming that we provide. Until next time, guys.